Good afternoon. We're bringing today's education and economic development budget hearings to order. I just want to go over the order of the agenda for everyone's awareness. We'll begin with Salisbury University, followed by Morgan State, then by Coppin State, and then we'll conclude with the Accountability and Implementation Board, okay? And so at first, we'll be hearing from Sarah Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. So after receiving the most applications, over 8,900 for fall 2018, the numbers declined 15.1% by 2020, which may be attributed to the pandemic. Since then, applications have increased 6%, but the percentage accepted students enrolling declined to an average of 24% before the pandemic to an average of 19%. And this has resulted in a decline of enrollment of first-time students in 22 and 23. Exhibit 2 on page 5 shows the trends in fall undergraduate enrollment, which declined for a third year, but the rate of decline slowed to 1.5% or 98 students. Since 2019, continuing students have accounted for over 86% of the decline of enrollment, with most of the decreases occurring in 21 and 22, indicating the impact the pandemic had on enrollment. After increasing 13.1%, first-time students slightly declined by 2 in 23. While transfers increased by 11 students in 23, the number has dropped 47.7% since 2014, which may be attributed to enrollment decline at the community colleges. We asked the president to comment on, given the national trend of enrollment declines at regional institutions, how Salisbury will be able to stabilize and grow enrollment. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 7 and retention rates. After remaining stable at 81% for the second year, the rate declined to 77% with the 22 cohort, which can be attributed to the effects of the pandemic. I would note the rate did improve to 82% with the 23 cohort. Prior to the pandemic, the third year rate remained stable at 66%, and since then has declined to 61% with the 22 cohort. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the 6-year graduation rates. In the 2014 cohort of all students achieves the highest rate of 75%, which has since declined to 71%. And the rate for minorities and African-American cohorts declined 64% and 63% respectively for the 2018 cohorts. Exhibit 5 on page 9 compares 6-year graduation rates of Pell and non-Pell first-time, full-time, and transfer students. And overall, non-Pell students graduate at a higher rate than Pell students, with the graduation rate of non-Pell students consistently exceeding 70%. First-time, full-time Pell students graduate at the lowest rate, which declined from 61% to 56% in 22. Turning to affordability, Exhibit 6 on page 10 compares cost of attendance with the net average price. And in 22, the average net price was 25.4% lower than the published price. And for families with incomes over 30%, the average price was 61% below the published price. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows spending on institutional aid, which grew 68.5% since 2017 to 12.7 million. However, during this time period, spending on need-based aid fell 36% to 1.6 million. We asked the president to comment on why expenditures on need-based aid have declined over the past 5 years. On page 12 is a discussion regarding the impact of the FAFSA simplification. And overall, Salisbury projects 122 students will either lose or see a decrease in their award, and notes that they will try to make these students whole, but it will cost an additional $800,000. We asked the president to comment on giving the continued shortfall in education and general revenues, where they will find the money to make these students whole. Exhibit 8 on page 13 show budget changes by program areas for 23 and 24. And expenditures on education and expenditures increased 6.6 million. Overall spending increases across program areas are related to annualization of the 23 general salary increases. And other increases include 1.1 million in operation and maintenance of plant that is related to the 2% spending target on facility renewals. The decrease of 422,000 on institutional support is related to a decline in equipment purchases. In 23 and 24, E&G expenditures exceeded revenues by 7.6 million and 11.2 million respectively, and these shortfalls were covered by surpluses and auxiliary. As shown in Exhibit 9 on page 14, except for 21, there has been a shortfall in revenue since 2018. And despite receiving $8.4 million federal relief funds in 22, there was an $8.5 million shortfall. And in 24, SU received $4 million in general funds related to funding guideline attainment and had its deficit increased to $11.2 million. These shortfalls were covered by surpluses and auxiliary, and while institutions will use these surpluses to cover shortfalls in the academic enterprises, the relatively large deficits and surpluses raises concern as why E&G expenditures have not been reduced to better align with revenues if students may be overcharged or conversely if spending on auxiliary being reduced to cover the shortfall. We asked the president to comment on the reliance of the relatively high auxiliary surpluses to cover E&G spending and efforts to align E&G expenditures with revenue. Turning to Exhibit 10 on page 16 in the proposed budget, when excluding the impact of the 24 general salary increases and the 25 allowance that aren't in the 24 appropriation, working appropriation, state funds declined 1% or over $75,000. The decrease is mainly due to $2.1 million related to increasing the turnover to 6%, which is partly offset by increases allocated for various statewide costs. Exhibit 11 on page 18, you can see the impact the pandemic had on revenues in 21, which declined $5.7 million. In 21 and 22, those losses in revenues were partly offset by federal relief funds. And while revenues have rebounded in 23, exceeding pre-pandemic levels, the composition has changed with state funds comprising 38% of revenues compared to 28% in 2019. Tuition and fees that once accounted for around 40% of revenues now comprise 34%. Exhibit 12 on page 20 compares authorized and filled positions between 2019 and 24, and when excluding research and public service, the vacancy increased from 5% to 7.2%. The number of unfilled positions and instructions increased from 16 to 30. And at 11.7%, institutional support has the greatest percentage of unfilled positions. Overall, the increase in unfilled positions shows the continuing challenges faced by institutions in hiring and retaining personnel since the end of the pandemic. The recommendation is on page 21 is to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendations, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Are there any questions for Ms. Baker? Thank you so much. At this time, we'll be hearing from Salisbury's president and team. And I would like you to pronounce your last name for me because it's important to me to say it correctly.
Absolutely. It's Lepre.
Lepre?
Yes.
Lepre.
Yes.
Okay, that's important.
Yeah.
Dr. Carolyn Ringer Lepre. Now, before we start, Delegate Anderton requested that I ask you 14 questions because he could not be here for a different bill hearing. I will not do that to you, but I do have a little trivia question for you.
Okay.
So last week, our committee had a meeting with a former delegate who actually used to be my district mate in Baltimore City, who is also an alum of Salisbury University, back when it was Salisbury State.
Okay.
And he was also a member of its basketball team.
Okay.
Do you have an answer perhaps to that?
Could it be Talmadge?
Come on, you're on fire. That's a Talmadge branch. I'm very impressed. I'm very happy that I will report back to Delegate Anderton. So thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, good afternoon. And I'm so pleased to be here today. And today I'm also joined by my Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Lori Couch, my Vice President of Student Affairs, Dane oh my gosh, Faust. Sorry, my brain. It's the Talmadge thing. It's got me all like my CFO, Aurora Edenhart Pepe, and my Chief of Staff, Eli Modlin. I would like to start by thanking Chair Smith and the members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to come before you today to discuss some of Salisbury University's remarkable achievements, along with the many opportunities that we foresee for our institution. I would also like to thank Sarah Baker for her thorough analysis and presentation today. We exist with the dual purpose of ensuring student success and to contribute to the well-being of the Eastern Shore and the state. To this end, we recognize that setting students up for success includes keeping our students enrolled for timely graduation. I'm proud to say that SU has the second highest six-year graduation rate among master's level institutions in the USM and the highest four-year graduation rate among master's level institutions in the USM. Additionally, SU increased our retention rates this year to 80%, up 4 percentage points from last year. We were one of the few in the USM who saw an increase in our retention rates. That means when we bring students to Salisbury University, we keep them at Salisbury University. When students transfer to SU, they are given the same hands-on attention that our first-time college students receive to support their success. At SU, we graduate 66% of our Maryland Community College transfer students within 4 years, and are proud that we have been recognized as having the highest four-year graduation rates for transfer students between a single university and community college pairing in the state of Maryland with our partner, Warwick Community College, according to the U.S. Department of Education. And we are in the top 25 of all university community college pairings in the United States. We recognize that student success in and out of the classroom is highly intertwined with mental well-being. We have made significant investment in Timely Care, a 24/7 telemental health service provider that is free for all SU students. We are committed to making these much-needed resources as accessible as possible. And this service is a beautiful partner to the traditional in-person services that we continue to offer. Our commitment to our students doesn't end with graduation. We are keenly aware of the college debt crisis for our nation, and we are committed to making the path to a degree affordable for all. For this current academic year, we increased our merit scholarship funding by 21% and awarded the highest amount of financial aid in SU history, nearly $17 million. Our high-impact practices are a hallmark of the Salisbury University experience, including undergraduate student research, internship pathways, living learning communities, and study abroad. Reinforcing our relationships for study abroad opportunities has been a priority, as providing cultural competence and finding ways to give our students global awareness has perhaps never been more important than it is now. It is our goal to become the Maryland Public University with the greatest percentage of students with study abroad experiences. Often, our students strive to combine their research and professional interests with a study abroad experience. Mentored by our talented faculty, our students have received more than 100 national and international fellowships awarded over the last decade, including the Boren, Rangel, and Goldwater scholarships. Our greatest success during this period has been with the Fulbright Scholarship. For the past 7 years, including this one, we have been named a top Fulbright producer in the country and had the distinction of being named the #1 producer of Fulbright students at master's level institutions in the nation last year. Studies show that college athletics is another high-impact practice that substantively increases student success and satisfaction. Approximately 10% of our student body is one of our outstanding Division III student athletes. Continuing our legacy of excellence, last spring, we celebrated 2 national championships. Men's lacrosse earned their 13th NCAA Division III national championship in program history, and our cheerleading team earned their first national championship in program history. That said, whether they win or lose on the fields and courts, our student athletes win in the classroom. Our student athletes have higher cumulative GPAs and graduate at higher rates than the average SU student, illustrating how significant the athlete experience can be to overall collegiate success. Since joining Salisbury University, I have learned that Seagulls pride themselves on our commitment to the greater Salisbury and Eastern Shore community. Just a few weeks ago, SU earned the 2023 Division III NCAA Community Service Award, recognizing our student athletes' service to the Salisbury community. Additionally, SU's ShoreCorps program is the largest AmeriCorps program in the state, with more than 200 members. This program also provides $300,000 in tuition assistance and approximately 83,000 hours of community service to 30 nonprofit agencies across the Eastern Shore. Salisbury University serves as a vibrant hub for community development, fostering a culture of knowledge sharing and innovation that extends beyond its campus borders. Through the outreach programs, research initiatives, and partnerships with local organizations, the university actively contributes to the well-being of the community by addressing societal challenges and promoting positive change. By educating future leaders, conducting impactful research, and engaging in collaborative projects, the university becomes a catalyst for positive transformation, enhancing the overall quality of life in the surrounding community. We continue to grow our presence in downtown Salisbury with the new Museum of Eastern Shore Culture, which is scheduled to open this summer. It adds to SU's presence downtown, which already includes the SU Galleries and the Entrepreneurship Center, which to date has distributed over $3 million in cash and in-kind contributions to support student and local small businesses. Every day, we are making a direct impact on our community by meeting vital workforce needs and by making it a priority to keep our students in Maryland and on the Eastern Shore. SU was founded as a teachers' college, and true to that mission, nearly 100 years later, we continue to educate the teachers of tomorrow. We ensure quality field experiences, including student teaching throughout the education program. The vast majority of our students complete their internships and student teaching experiences in regional school systems, creating connections with the Eastern Shore before graduation. And this year, 35 of the 46 Maryland Teacher of the Year semifinalists in the Tri-County area of Wacomico, Worcester, and Somerset counties are SU alumni. Of course, we educate more than outstanding teachers. Salisbury University is one of the main employers on the shore across a wide range of business and service industries. Thanks to the highest quality teaching, local partnerships, and strong pathways to the workforce, Salisbury is also a leader in educating some of the best nurses in the state. SU has the highest pass rate on the NCLEX exam of all BSN programs in the state and has a 10-year history of an 100% pass rate on the nurse practitioner certification exam. Our record of employment is also impressive and illustrates the difference that SU students are making in our workforce. Based on data collected from the May and December 2023 graduating classes, 86% of all our health science graduates, including those in nursing, medical lab science, public health, and social work, are all currently employed in Maryland. I want to thank you once again for your collective support of all our initiatives in the community and at Salisbury University. We have submitted written responses to the questions from DLS, but I'm happy to answer anything that you would like.
Thank you for this presentation. Is this her first time?
Yes.
Also, it's historical. We want to say just thank you. We've had quite a few new leaders come in before us, so great to see you. Are there any questions for President LaPree or her team? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes the budget hearing for Salisbury University. We will now hear from Morgan State University. There he is. I didn't see him. No strings.
Thank you. We're going to start on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 to 2023. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 691 students from fall 2022 to 2023. As illustrated in the exhibit, first-time full-time students experienced an increase of 3.6% in fall 2023, following a decrease in fall 2022. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As shown in the exhibit, the number of applications grew greatly in fiscal 2023, totaling over 22,741. The yield rate of 12.1%, which is the number of students who actually enrolled from that total, was the lowest rate recorded from fiscal 2014 through 2023. The acceptance rate of 83%, the green line in the exhibit, was also the third highest rate recorded over this period. Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides a breakdown of enrollment trends by location. Continuing to reverse the trend of declining enrollment, in-state enrollment grew by 291 students in 2023. The international undergraduate student population has fallen from the 2017 high mark of 780 students to 161 in 2023. The out-of-state student population continues to increase, growing by 392 students in 2023. Out-of-state students now make up more than 40% of undergraduate enrollment at the university. DLS asked the president to comment on how the institution has increased its in-state population in recent classes after years of decline. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the second-year retention rates for first-time full-time students. The second-year retention rate had fallen in 2017 and 2018, but rebounded in 2019, totaling 73.5%. The second-year retention rate dropped to 70% and 68.4% for the 20 and 2021 cohorts, respectively. This decline is not surprising due to these cohorts overlapping with the pandemic. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 4-year graduation rate held steady at 21.8% for the 2016 and 2017 cohorts, but fell to 19% for the 2018 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate decreased slightly by 0.5 percentage points, but is still the third highest in this period. Exhibit 6 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Non-Pell first-time full-time students had the highest graduation rates. Both non-Pell and Pell recipient full-time transfer students were more likely to graduate within 8 years than Pell recipient first-time, full-time, and part-time transfer Pell and non-Pell recipient students. Pell and non-Pell eligible part-time transfer students graduated at the lowest rates. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2020 through 2022. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $24,447. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $15,591. In fiscal 2022, the average net price was $11,511 less than the cost of attendance. But this exhibit also shows is that the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2022, it cost a student $9,099 with a family income of under $30,000, but $19,753 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 8 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased $14.6 million between fiscal 2018 through 2023. Need-based aid totaled $23.4 million alone in fiscal 2023. U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 9 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students range from just over $20,000 for civil engineering majors to $31,254 for social work majors. And registered nurses had the highest median earnings at $97,259. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 10 on page 14 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2023 to 2024. The largest dollar change was in research, which increased by $17.6 million. Spending on instruction also increased substantially, growing by $15.8 million. According to Morgan, the fiscal 2024 working appropriation does not reflect final anticipated expenditures and revenues. The proposed fiscal 2025 budget found in Exhibit 11 on page 16 includes $7.6 million in salary enhancements, $26.7 million in HBCU settlement funds, and a general fund increase of $3.4 million when excluding the salary enhancements. In total, Morgan's state fund allocation increases by $10.4 million or 5.5% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2024 working appropriation. DLS asked the president to discuss the planned use of this funding and the work of the new center that's receiving funding. Exhibit 12 on page 17 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. In fiscal 2025, state funds account for 45% of unrestricted funds. Morgan anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow substantially, increasing to $370.6 million in the 2025 allowance. The personnel data for the university is found on page 18, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2023, the university had over 184 positions vacant above the expected turnover amount, which can partially be attributed to the creation of 192 positions in fiscal 2023. DLS asked the president to comment on the progress being made to fill the vacant positions. Moving to issues, which begins on page 19, the first issue covers Morgan's goal of R1 classification by 2030. Since January 2022, when Morgan released its strategic plan, Transformation Morgan Leading the Future, Morgan had the goal of reaching R1, very high research activity within the Carnegie classifications of institutions of higher education. Morgan put itself on that path for R1 with this previous strategic plan that included the strategic goal of enhancing its status as a doctoral research university. On November 1st, 2023, the Carnegie Foundation for the for the Advancement of Teaching, and the American Council of Education announced that the Carnegie classifications will change for the upcoming 2025 classification cycle. The most notable change to the basic classification system is removal of research classification for doctoral universities. Research will now be a category separate from the basic classification. There will no longer be a complex methodology to determine which university is classified as R1 or R2. Currently, a complicated formula ranks all potential research universities based on their doctorate academic program inventory, types of research and development expenditures, science and engineering research staff, and a per capita analysis. Once the universities are ranked, the top half of the institutions are placed in R1 and the bottom half is set in R2. This methodology for determining R1 and R2 universities incentivize universities to establish programs and fields they lack to be eligible for R1 or R2 classification. In the institution's quest for R1 status, Morgan's managing for results metrics have mirrored the previous methodology for determining R1, R2 classification. The institution has been increasing its investments in R&D in both science and engineering and non-science and engineering fields. Since fiscal 2021, total R&D expenditures have increased by $17.6 million or 85.4% from $20.6 million to $38.2 million in fiscal 2023. Carnegie's current method will be replaced with a simple threshold. Any institution that spends at least $50 million in R&D and confers at least 70 research scholarship doctorates in a year will be designated R1 or very high research spending and doctorate production. R2 or high research spending and doctorate production will be designated to institutions that spend at least $5 million in R&D and have at least 20 research scholarship doctorates in a year. The 2025 classifications will be based on the higher of either a 3-year average covering 2021 through 2023 or the most recent single year 2023. In the future, it will only be based on the 3-year average. With this simplification, Morgan is positioned to achieve R1 status in the 2028 classification cycle, which will be determined by the R&D expenditures and doctoral production for fiscal 2024 through 2026. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows Morgan's expected R&D expenditures and degrees conferred for fiscal 2024 and 2025, according to the university's most recent managing for results data. If Morgan meets its goals for those 2 fiscal years, the institution will achieve its goal by calendar 2028 if $59 million is expended in research and development in fiscal 2026. DLS asked the president to comment on how the proposed changes might affect its approach to research investment. The second issue is on page 20 and covers the Maryland College of Osteopathic Medicine, MD-Com at Morgan. Morgan agreed to allow a private entity, Salute Education LLC, to operate the private for-profit medical school on its campus. MHEC approved MD-Com to operate in Maryland, and the school is expecting its first students in late 2024. Salute Education was to cover the cost of demolishing the Montebello complex and building a new facility. However, Morgan has been exploring state funds for these projects. If the private entity is no longer planning to fund this new school and program, Morgan would need to submit its own academic program approval to move forward with this new program on its campus. DLS asked the president to provide an update on the status of the private partnership and if there are adequate facilities for the first class expected in 2024. The DLS operating budget recommended actions are found on page 21 and is to concur with the government's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Ms. Kelly Norton, I apologize for not announcing you earlier. Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions for Ms. Norton? Seeing none, thank you, President Wilson. Please introduce your team and great to see you.
It's great seeing you as well, Madam Chair. Madam Chair Smith and members of the committee, thank you very much for the support that you have provided to Morgan State University over the years. As you heard from the analysts, we certainly have invested the increased support that we've gotten from the state. And as we made the argument here for that investment, we have said to you that when you make an investment in an institution like Morgan, you should expect high dividends. And so that's what we are returning to the state in so many ways and in so many spaces. I certainly want to thank the analysts for a very comprehensive analysis of the university. And I have with me several members of my team from left to right, David Lachina, who is the interim executive vice president for budget and finance. To my right, Dr. Kara Turner, the senior vice president for enrollment management and student success. And to my far right, she needs no introduction, former Maryland State Senator Joan Carter Conway.
Mr. President, we have a few new members who may not realize that Senator Joan Carter Conway was also the prior chair of the Senate, formerly EED Committee, but now has this strange new name.
It always changes.
Yeah.
It's been changing.
But thank you
since
for
I
being here with
arrived.
us.
We also have submitted our testimony. I will not read it. I will just give you a high-level summary. Morgan is really in a period of immense growth and historic transformation. When we released our strategic plan about 3 years ago, Transformation Morgan 2030, Leading the Future, we put in that plan, yes, bold but reachable goals. And one of the goals there was around enrollment. And at the time, our enrollment was about 7,250 students or so. And we opined that we could reach 10,000 by 2030. Well, I can report to you that we are 6 years ahead of schedule there. That right before we submitted our final numbers to the state on October the 15th, we had 10,400 students. But of course, we had to work with our students to get them financially cleared. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, we invested about as much as we could. We still invest in terms of institutional aid, a larger percent of our revenue coming from the state in tuition than any other public institution in Maryland. But we are absolutely convinced that when we come here next year or so, we will be well over 10,000 students at Morgan officially. We also, in that plan, focused once again on student success and well-being. And in addition to the enrollment, we looked across the state of Maryland and we wanted to make sure that there were students on the campus from every county in the state. And so we have reached out to every county in the state, making young people aware of the tremendous opportunities at Morgan. You can get degrees from Morgan that you cannot get at any other public or private institution in the state. And those degrees have been brought on with a high degree of intentionality to align with the future of work and the work of the future. We also were able to increase significantly our in-state enrollment this year by 40%. And so our in-state versus out-of-state total enrollment is still majority in-state, even though the brand of Morgan has really grown all over the United States and indeed all over the world. We have upward of 40 states now represented in over 70 countries. We also have partnered with our community colleges here in Maryland. This is not new for us. We started this, Dr. Turner, I believe about 10 years ago or so. We put in place a program called the TIP program, the Transfer Incentive Program, where we went to all of the two-year colleges in Maryland and said, we have 13 or so degrees that we're offering at Morgan, ranging from engineering, physics to many of the other areas where they were under-enrolled, and we could increase capacity without having to hire additional professors, et cetera. And we said to those community colleges, we want to create an incentive for those students to stay here and get their associate degree and then transfer to Morgan in one of these 13 or so areas. And we would provide them with $2,000 per semester scholarship up to 5 semesters of $10,000. And so that really has helped us to really create sustainable partnerships with our two-year institutions. We also have partnered with CCBC on their recent initiative. And so we look forward to continue to grow that pipeline of two-year institutions to Morgan. Our students at Morgan, that is really what brings us so much joy, is the body of work that we have undertaken to see our students, if you will, climb to the apex of brilliance. And that is demonstrated throughout this report. I do not apologize as I walk the campus. My colleagues here don't apologize when we say to our students, we expect you to be able to dance on the world stage when you leave Morgan. And we don't care who is in the room. We don't care where they went to school. You will be equipped with the tools to enable you to compete with anyone, any place, anywhere. And they are doing that. And you can see in our testimony that our students are winning everywhere. They are winning these fellowships. They are winning the prestigious scholarships. Morgan still ranks #1 amongst HBCUs and Fulbrights. Students here are winning the Obama fellowships, the Kirshner fellowships, and they really, really are doing the state of Maryland and Morgan proud. We say the same thing to our faculty. Morgan has traditionally had some of the best faculty that you will find in all of American higher education. And we really see it as our obligation, to continue that legacy and then to elevate it. And so just this past year, we had 9 scientists at Morgan who were rated amongst the top 2% of scientists in the world. 9 of them are at Morgan. We're not talking about our professors outside of the sciences, but just 9 in the sciences, period. We also have had many of our professors then to become fellows of national associations, to be inducted into national associations as fellows. And I want to highlight Dean of the School of Engineering, Dean Oscar Barton. Dean Barton just received the 2024 American Society of Mechanical Engineers Edwin F. Church Medal. He is the first person in the 53-year history of that prestigious medal who is Black to have achieved it. Dean Barton has been with us for about 4 years. He was the Dean of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the U.S. Naval Academy. And then prior to that, he was the Dean of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at George Mason University. Madam Chair, he is both an alum with my undergraduate institution and yours. And so he's doing very, very well in the seat at Morgan. Also, you may have read that that I too was selected this year as the National Harold W. McGraw Jr. Prize winner in education. That has been dubbed, if you will, the Nobel Prize in Education. But I was there this year with 2 other people from around the United States, the superintendent of Los Angeles County Schools in the K-12 space, and then a world-renowned mathematician and engineer who in the scholarly area was from Oakland University in Michigan. And with that came a $50,000 personal check, of which I politely handed it over to Dr. Carol Turner to help so many of our students to do what? To stay at Morgan and finish what they came to finish. We also are very, very excited that Dr. Willie E. May, who was the former Undersecretary of Commerce under the Obama administration, and also the director of NIST, that acronym is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. He was there for 35 years. He joined me as my vice president for research and economic development, and has really, really done just an amazing job working with our team. Well, this year, his peers across the nation elected him to be the president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And so he now is the national voice on advancing science in the United States. And he is our vice president for research. So we're very, very proud of that as well. And then finally, I was inducted this year into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And that is really the result, once again, of just the tremendous work of our faculty, of our team. And I was just there as quarterback to receive that on behalf of Morgan State University. In terms of our elevation to R1 status, we have a correction to the analyst report there because our research expenditures that we are reporting out this year are $51 million. And so we actually meet that data point that Carnegie has there, which is 50 million in research expenditures each year. When the rankings come out, or the ratings, because they're not rankings, when the ratings come out in January of 2025, we will miss it by 4 doctorates. And so we would have an average of 66, and that's because during the COVID year, we saw our doctoral production drop and it went to 58. But we are quite sure that when Carnegie releases the ratings in December of 2027, and then publicly in January of 2028, Morgan will join the other two public institutions in Maryland as R1, College Park and Johns Hopkins. And so we're very, very excited about that. Also, in terms of our research grants, last year we brought in $127 million in research grants and contracts and gifts, about 81 million in direct research grants, and then 27 million in what we call an IDIQ. And we expect we're on track this year to actually eclipse $100 million in research grants at Morgan. Of course, when I arrived at Morgan, it was 29 million. And so this is historic for us, and it is a team effort, and the investments that we're making in our faculty actually are paying high dividends for us. As I make my way through this to get to the end, we constantly looking at upgrading our campus-wide infrastructure in order to support operational and academic excellence at Morgan and overall institutional capacity. And so we really thank the state and thank you again for the investments that you're making in our facilities. Because the students and their parents, when they come to a campus, they want to see where that campus has to speak to them a certain way. It has to speak to them in the following way: you matter. And the buildings on this campus speak to that, and the culture of the campus speaks to that. And so we certainly appreciate the investments in capital. We have in the governor's budget a new science complex at Morgan. And Madam Chair, I've gone on record as saying this in the past. I'm about to conclude my 14th year at Morgan. When I arrived, I could not believe the science building. I could not believe that an institution had actually been able to produce world-class scientists. If you look at every Black person in the United States who had a PhD in either science or engineering, Morgan ranks number 6 in the nation in terms of where they got their undergraduate degree. And the facilities were just so inadequate, and they still are. And so we desperately need this new science complex. And we've done everything we can to be as parsimonious in the investment as we can be. But we just simply cannot bring this building in under 340 million. And the state has given us an allocation of 254. And Kim McCalla, whom most of you know, since she's been at Morgan, I've been at Morgan, every single capital project that has come in for us has been under budget and on time. And so I think she's world-class at what she does. And we simply will continue to work with the state in the next year to see if we can get that up. We also, in terms of elevating our status, we are not in any way forgetting the communities that abut us. That would just be almost foolish. The communities that abut the campus must rise as the campus rises. And so we have an ongoing relationship with all of those communities. We don't do anything at Morgan without involving the community input. And that is really what we're doing now. And that's what we will do as we build out the master plan for Lake Clifton. And so let's go to the issues that you've asked us to address, because we have a lot here in our 25-page report. And I'm going to begin now to address the issues that you've asked of us. So the first one, you asked the institution through me to comment on how we have increased our in-state population and in recent years. And I'm going to ask Dr. Turner to quickly summarize that for you.
Good afternoon. Just a few things. I will not read them all, but basically the same strategies that have worked to bring us a record out-of-state enrollment are the same strategies that have been at play with our increased in-state enrollment. Just 3 I'd like to highlight. One is the implementation of a financial aid optimization strategy, which has allowed us to provide a lot more need and merit-based aid to incoming students and made us very competitive with other institutions there. 2 is a renewed emphasis on social justice and diversity and inclusion, Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd's murder, and things like that have really seen HBCUs have become more popular. Students want to be somewhere, Black and brown students, somewhere where they feel psychologically safe, physically safe, welcomed. And so that has been in our favor. And finally, as the president mentioned, the extensive capital investments that you all have made in us have really allowed us to build a beautiful campus that parents and students feel they want to be at. So thank you.
Next, you've asked me to discuss the planned use of funding for the Center for Urban and Coastal Science and Climate Research. And so I'll briefly say this. We want to really thank Governor Wes Moore for this investment in the university, for bringing online now what would be our eighth research center. And so this one is being brought on once again with a high degree of intentionality. There are very few climate research centers that are looking at the impact of climate change on urban populations, marginalized communities, and Morgan will be up there as having the first amongst the first to do so. We plan to have a bifurcated location for the center. There will be a very visible location located downtown Baltimore. It's looking at the issues of coastal and urban, and so we want to make sure that we are sending the right message to our citizens in downtown Baltimore that we are paying attention to the impact of climate change. And then the other location would be in St. Leonard in Southern Maryland, where we have a campus down there as well. It's been looking at these issues for a while. We also are hopeful, Madam Chair, that given who we are in Baltimore, that and the work that we've done in working with the U.S. Department of Energy and others on Capitol Hill, that there is now talk about possibly starting an 18th federal lab in the U.S. And that federal lab would be focused on urban climate. And it is being talked about as perhaps being located on or led by an HBCU or an MSI. And so if that were to happen, if it were to materialize, that would mean billions of dollars literally over an extended period. So Morgan wants to be in a position where we could leverage this if indeed the United States is serious about creating an 18th federal lab, and that lab is going to be focused on climate. So really appreciate the governor understanding that and seeing the potential return on investment that this could have for our state. You've asked me also to detail the progress being made to fill vacant positions, and I'm going to ask David Lachina to briefly summarize that for us.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So regarding the progress on vacant positions, several initiatives are underway. We're certainly trying to increase our outreach. We're looking at systems, improving our systems to enhance our recruiting process. We're looking at expanding our advertising so we can have more reach potential candidates in a more efficient and quick way, as well as enhancing our workforce. One of the things process-wise that we need to consider is understanding that many of these vacancies have resulted from new initiatives, is to try and better match the recruiting process with establishing of the positions. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So,
and the next area is and how the proposed changes to Carnegie might impact research investment. I just say here that I was one of the 17 presidents across the nation who met for a year with American Council on Education President Ted Mitchell and the leadership from Carnegie to take apart that very, very complicated metrics. You would have needed 5 PhDs in order to understand how an institution actually went from moderate research, R3, R2, R1. And so we had literally built the digital twin to that model at Morgan. So we knew exactly where we were in the old model, and we were going to get there in the old model anyway. But we came together as a group of university presidents across the country and spent about a year disentangling that. And then we reached unanimous agreement that it should only be these 2 data points. And so that's how we got the 2 data points. You certainly had representation from Maryland Higher Education in the room and a significant part of the conversation and the outcome. You also have asked me to provide an update on the status of the private partnership and if there are adequate facilities for the first expected class in 2024. Unfortunately, as we wrote here, the project has experienced delays, and we understand will not qualify to actually enroll a class in fall of 2024. Please understand that the university, however, is in continued discussions with the private partner, seeking a solution, that we are keeping all our options open. This is a much needed effort in the state, and we will keep our eyes on this and bring you back to the state where we are and how we move forward to make it happen for the citizens of the state of Maryland. Madam Chair of the committee, that is our testimony, and those are my remarks.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and congratulations to you personally, to the institution broadly, to your professors and students who are just knocking it out the park. Thank you for sharing a few of the highlights with us. I wanted to remark on the kind of increasing the pipeline of community college students to Morgan. That's really encouraging, and I like that it was targeted around disciplines you really needed to see growth in. I think this is just a reminder to the full subcommittee that any stress we see on the budgets of community colleges could interrupt the very efforts you're undergoing right now. So I want to commend you on that work, and we hope that our community college partners can be set up for success to feed into your program and others. So thank you for sharing. Delegate Harris.
Appreciate it, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for your report. I also was reading to piggyback on our chair, reading the you all was ranked best for Veterans College and received that reward 3rd time in 3 straight years. In the Military Times, I used to read the Military Times every single issue when it came out when I was in the military. So a question for you was, have you seen an increase with veterans applying to the school based on this recognition?
Dr.
Yes, we have. I don't have exact numbers for you today, but I can tell you that we are in the process of also hiring a veteran recruiter for the first time. And so we're very excited and look forward to definitely continuing to increase our veteran population.
Absolutely. And also a member of our Board of Regents, retired 4-star General Larry Ellis is ensuring that the campus will always be a welcoming campus for veterans. Morgan has produced 17 generals for the U.S. Army. We were just eclipsed, I believe, last year by South Carolina State as having produced more Black generals for the U.S. Army than any other institution in the country except West Point. And so that is a part of our DNA, and the ROTC program at Morgan, in partnership with Coppin, Bear Battalion, go to all of the commissioning there. And President Jenkins, we have 3 or 4 students every year who are being commissioned from Coppin. And so we actually do this a joint program together. But General Ellis and General Kip Ward and others are keeping our eyes on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions for President Wilson or his team? Seeing none, thank you for coming before us today. We thank you for your leadership, and not just Maryland higher ed, but nationally. Thank you so much. That concludes the budget hearing from Morgan State. At this time, we'll be moving on to Coppin State, and again, returning analyst Kelly Norton.
Thank you. We're going to start on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 through 2023. Fall 2023 total undergraduate enrollment increased for the first time since fall 2019, increasing by 53 students or 3% when compared to 2022. As is illustrated in the exhibit, all groups except continuing students experienced decreases in fall 2023. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As illustrated in the exhibit, the number of applications had been improving from 2016 to 2019, but sharply declined with the onset of the pandemic. Applications increased in 2022 and 2023, growing to 4,739 in 2023. The acceptance rate in 2023 increased to 49%, which is the highest total since 2010. However, the yield rate was 18%, roughly in line with what the institution has achieved since 2013. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 7 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time, full-time students. From the 2012 through the 2021 cohorts, the second year retention rate has stayed within the 60% range. There was a decrease with the 2020 cohort, but the retention rate rebounded to 70.8% with the 2022 cohort. The third year retention rate has been steadily increasing since the 2015 cohort, with the 2018 cohort's 50.1% retention rate being the highest rate attained at the university in over a decade. However, after the 2018 cohort, the third year retention rates followed the same pattern as the second year retention rates and experienced decreases. The rate slightly improved for the 2021 cohort, which increased to 39.5%. Exhibit 4 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time, full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate peaked in the 2014 cohort at 28.5%, but declined 2 cohorts in a row, reaching 21.7% in the 2016 cohort. Despite the declines, the 6-year graduation rate for the 2017 cohort increased to 24.8%. The 4-year graduation rate, which had experienced continual growth from the 2008 cohort through the 2015 cohort, declined after that period and fell to 6.8% for the 2019 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Full-time transfer students, both Pell and non-Pell eligible, graduate at higher rates than first-time full-time and part-time transfer students. Pell eligible students graduate at lower rates than non-Pell eligible students in all categories, with the exception of part-time transfer students. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2020 through 2022. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $21,750. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded varied depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2022, it cost a student $7,532 with a family income of under $30,000, but $10,590 for a student with a family income of between $48,000 to $75,000. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $3.7 million in fiscal 2017 to $4.2 million in fiscal 2022. Need-based scholarships totaled $1.4 million in fiscal 2022 and represented the aid category with the greatest award distributed for that year. Exhibit 8 on page 12 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just over $20,000 for biology majors to over $35,000 for liberal arts and science majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, nursing majors attained the highest median earnings, totaling over $80,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2023 to 2024. Instruction costs are expected to increase by $5 million and institutional support by $3.4 million due to the filling of vacant regular and contractual positions. Operation and maintenance of plant decreases, falling by $0.6 million as a result of lower debt service costs. The proposed fiscal 2025 budget found in Exhibit 10 on page 15 includes $2.4 million in salary enhancements, $9 million in HBCU settlement funds, and a general fund decrease of $0.5 million when excluding the salary enhancements. Coppin's total state fund allocation increases by $1.3 million or 2% relative to adjusted fiscal 2024 working appropriation. Exhibit 11 on page 16 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. As is shown in the exhibit, state support generally represents roughly 2/3 of unrestricted revenue for Coppin. The fiscal 2025 allowance anticipates unrestricted revenues to reach $93.5 million. The personnel data for the university is found on page 17, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2023, the university had 76 vacancies, 50 positions vacant above the expected turnover. DLS asked the president to comment on the high number of vacancies and the efforts to fill them. Moving to issues which begin on page 18, the first issue covers the fiscal compliance audit for Coppin. In November 2023, the Office of Legislative Audits, or OLA, released an audit of Coppin covering the period from July 25th, 2018 through June 30th, 2022, which included the distribution of higher education emergency relief funds, or HERF, during the COVID-19 pandemic. The audit included 5 findings, the most concerning being that Coppin awarded most HERF grants without consideration of an individual student's cost of attendance and actual financial need, and that additional hardship assistant grants were awarded to students who did not appear to meet eligibility criteria. According to OLA, Coppin distributed the HERF in equal predetermined amounts based on full or part-time status and not based on actual need. In particular, OLA noted that students whose costs of attendance were paid in part or whole by other means, or who had lighter course loads, were less likely to have needed the same level of HERF funding and consequently were more likely to have received a refund of that aid. Coppin was to award hardship grants to students that were eligible for federal Pell Grant funding who submitted an application for this additional assistance to demonstrate the need for the funds. Of the 28 students who received the hardship grant, 9 were not Pell eligible, including one that was a child of a Coppin employee. OLA also reported that 3 Coppin employees enrolled in just one class for the 2 semesters HERF funds were awarded and received the same HERF payments and credits as all part-time students, as well as remission of their tuition costs. As a result, these individuals each received cash refunds for these 2 semesters. None of these employees were enrolled in semester prior or after those semesters, and each employee was classified as a non-degree seeking student. In response to OLA's finding, Coppin is developing an independent financial aid advisory committee to review and implement policies and procedures for awarding all need-based aid award programs. DLS asked the president to comment on the progress of the committee, and the president should comment on Coppin's approach to the HERF grants and any policies that the institution has or will implement to ensure that financial aid programs are not used improperly prior to the completion of the committee's work. The second issue starts on page 18 and concerns enrollment and state funds per full-time equivalent student. As shown in Exhibit 12 on page 19, total enrollment at Coppin has continuously declined from 2011 through 2022. Coppin's total enrollment has fallen 51.1% from the 2005 record high of 4,306 students to 2,106 students in 2023. However, enrollment for the fall 2023 cohort represents an increase of 5.2% or 105 students from the fall 2022 cohort. Despite declining enrollment, education and general expenditures, with the exception of 2022, steadily increased as shown in Exhibit 13 on page 20. While generally not expending greater than the revenue brought in, Coppin's overall E&G expenditure amount is budgeted to increase by 32.4% from fiscal 2017 through 2025, growing by $19.9 million. As a result of the increased expenditures and decreasing enrollment, state funds per FTE have increased. Exhibit 14 on page 21 shows state funds per FTE at Coppin. From 2017 to the 2025 adjusted allowance, state funds spent per FTE have increased by $18,423 or $13,324 when excluding HBCU settlement funds. At $39,295, Coppin is behind only the University of Maryland, Baltimore in cost per FTEs. The DLS operating budget recommended action is found on page 22, and that is to see the University System of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Norton, for your presentation. Are there any questions for the analysts? Seeing none, thank you so much. President Jenkins, great to see you again. It's been so long.
I know.
And just maybe a week or so. And please introduce your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with the subcommittee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and give some high-level talking points of success about Coppin State University. I have with me to my left is Dr. Stefan Moore, who is my Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs. To my immediate right is Mr. Steve Danick, who is my Vice President for Administration and Finance. And to his right is Dr. Pamela Wilkes, University Provost. And in the gallery, I have with me Ms. Stephanie Hall, who is my Government and Legislative Affairs Chief Officer. And I have my Chief of Staff, Ms. Anne Marie Waterman. So that is the Coppin team. All right. Like my colleagues who came before me, we've submitted a document, so I won't read through that document, but I will take a moment to talk about a couple of the highlights that we are extremely proud of with regards to our work over the last several years at the institution. And as I tell my team, to be respectful of everyone's time, we won't attempt to fit 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound bag. So I'll be succinct. There's so much more that Coppin is doing and how we are moving the institution. We won't be able to get to all of it today, but these are things that I think are important for us to note. When I arrived at Coppin in 2020, we set out to reimagine our role as an urban institution. We wanted to look at our focus and how we address student issues and how we grew the overall enrollment of the institution, how we expanded access and opportunity, how we became more innovative from a research standpoint, and then how we did more to improve the human condition. And as an urban university, I think over the last several years, Coppin has continued to illustrate that it is a university that is invaluable and irreplaceable, not only to West Baltimore, but to the state of Maryland. Our brand and our reputation has never been stronger than what it is today. We continue to make significant milestones and growth at the institution. And our analyst, Ms. Norton, did a wonderful job and talked about some of the enrollment challenges that the university has had over the years. There are multiple reasons for that, and the pandemic certainly didn't help. But despite that, the team has really been laser focused on introducing and reintroducing Coppin State to many folks across Baltimore, the great state of Maryland, and beyond. And I believe that we're doing a fairly good job. You know, when I look at where Coppin was and where we are now and where we are headed, I am pleased to say that we educate a diverse, multicultural, multi-generational student population that is coming to us from over 35 states, including the District of Columbia and 31 countries, to earn degrees in our nationally academic programs, such as business, social work, psychology, teacher education, STEM, criminal justice, and healthcare. And yes, we pride ourselves on being a teacher's college. And if you walk through schools throughout Baltimore and Maryland and this region, you're going to find a teacher or a principal or assistant principal who graduated from Coppin State University. And we are very proud of that. We're equally as proud of the fact that we have the strongest nursing program amongst Maryland's HBCUs. Our social work program is ranked nationally in the top 15th. Our business management program is in the top 40 nationally. So Coppin has turned a corner and is really proven to be a gateway and a catalyst to upward and economic mobility that none of our peers can match. And the reason that I say that is because on my campus, we have not only the valedictorian and the salutatorian of their respective high schools, we also have students who are coming to us with the 2.0s, who didn't go to the best high schools, and they shouldn't be penalized for that. But what Coppin has a proven track record of doing is taking those individuals where they are and getting them over the finish line. No other four-year university in the state of Maryland are recruiting 2.0 students and getting them over the finish line. That is significant for Baltimore City and for our state. It's that bottom quartile that we have to continue to lift if our city and our state is going to be what we know it can be. And so at Coppin, we are extremely proud of that. You know, last fall, as was noted, our overall enrollment grew by over 5%, reversing a decade's in enrollment decline at the institution. We also created, out of our enrollment management team, a program called Reimagine Yourself at Coppin. We identified 400 individuals who had left the university before earning their degree. And we were very intrusive, very intentional about getting as many of those students back as we could. We're pleased that 114, over 25% of those students are now re-enrolled in Coppin, moving toward graduation. And the other piece that we are extremely, very pleased about is our commitment to dual enrollment. Coppin State University is the only four-year university in the state that has a high school on its campus. And as the charter operator of that high school, we are very committed to making sure that their K through 12 education prepares them for really 3 tracks: to leave high school and go right into the workforce, leave high school and go into a 2-year institution or certificate program, or leave high school and go directly into a 4-year institution. And we are very pleased at the number of students who are leaving Coppin Academy and coming to Coppin State. Now, there are some other options for them out there as well, but we're the leading institution that they are enrolling into right now. We're also pleased that more of the students at Coppin Academy are taking dual enroll classes with us at the institution. Now, when we talk about growing Coppin, we have to give a nod to our efforts to retain more of our students, because that is significantly important. In fact, in 2019, our retention rate was 57%. This year, we're at 74%. That is a significant turnaround in 3 years, and to do it in the midst of a global pandemic. But that is the type of work that is going on at the institution, with making sure that access and opportunity and retaining students remain a top focus. And to reduce our students' time to degree completion and lower student debt, we launched our Summer SOAR program. Our Summer SOAR program allows students who earn 30 semester credit hours in an academic year to take up to 6 hours of summer school for free. This allows them to keep moving forward and earning their degree, and not allowing finances to be a reason that interrupts that. And we're very pleased that this past summer, we saw over 150 students take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And at a time when folks are questioning the value and the cost of higher education, I'm pleased to say that Maryland's most affordable 4-year university continues to find ways to drive down costs. And one of the ways that we are doing this is we have expanded our merit and need-based scholarships at the undergraduate incoming freshman level, at the transfer level, and we have rolled out our new graduate assistantships that will also help our graduate students pay for their education and reduce overall debt. We also launched our Expand Eagle Nation program, which is a program which targets students from more than 30 states and territories that do not have an HBCU in their home state. Those students can attend Coppin for in-state tuition. And we are pleased at the national recognition that that program has received from places like California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan. And this past fall, we developed a MOU partnership with the Colorado Community College system. So very excited about what that program is going to yield for us. And, whether we're making history, playing LSU, as the first HBCU to ever host a NCAA Division I defending champion on their home turf, or my student athletes are out winning conference championships, I've often said Coppin is where scholars and champions are made. And we're extremely proud of what our student athletes are doing on the field of competition. In fact, we've won 2 conference championships in the last 2 years, bringing those rings and championships back to Baltimore City. But what we're most pleased about is that Coppin State leads the MEAC for the 3rd consecutive year with the highest student athlete graduation rate. That is higher than all of our peers, who most would consider to be high academic quality institutions. But it is Coppin State that is leading the charge and showing them how to ensure that athletes not only compete in the field of competition at the highest level, but we also know that they are students first, and therefore we graduate them higher than anyone else. Our culture of research at the institution has also undergone significant transformation. We have committed ourselves to making sure that our research is translational. It's not just research for publications and for faculty CVs, but it's real research that's making a difference in our community. And so we are pleased that in 2019, our research and grants at the institution was just over $2 million. This past year in 2023, that was over $14 million. That's a 1,200% increase in a matter of 3 years. Again, astonishing at what we are able to do at the university in a short period of time. You know, we are also working with our faculty using their expertise in our centers for excellence to have even greater impact on our community. Through our Center for Inclusive Excellence, we are focusing on how to get more Black and brown teachers into the K-12 system. That's important for a multitude of reasons. Our Center of Inclusive Excellence has been tapped as a national model that other states are wanting to follow and identify how we are making inroads into this important work. We are also pleased that through our Center for Nanotechnology, that we are developing ways to look at clean and renewable energy and climate issues that impact urban environments. We're not standing up centers. Our center has already been in this work and in this space for some time. And we're making significant progress, and it's drawing the attention from our state lawmakers to our federal lawmakers to other organizations across the country. We are also pleased that our commitment from our Bishop L. Robinson Justice Institute is focusing on how we reduce gun violence and youth violence across Baltimore City. And Dr. Johnny Rice II has been tapped as a national leader to help drive that narrative and find solutions on how we do it in Baltimore and how that can be scaled up and mirrored nationally. Our faculty is also sought for their expertise and their leadership. They lead national organizations as presidents at the state and national level, and Governor Westmore has appointed several of our faculty to statewide commissions. And as a preemptive and responsive 21st century university, we're also focusing on the needs of our students. And that's why I'm pleased that we partnered with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City to better support our students who are facing housing challenges. This is a first of its kind project in the state of Maryland, and Coppin is leading the way. We're also making inroads with our West North Avenue Development Authority. Coppin chairs that authority, and that authority is designed to revitalize West North Avenue. It's the first time that an HBCU in our nation has ever been tapped to lead the revitalization of a major city corridor. And Coppin's history, our faculty research, and our ability to understand what it means to be a leading anchor institution really drove that piece of Coppin being folded into the legislation. And because we sit on West North Avenue, a couple of months ago, I wrote a op-ed which was titled "Perception is Not Reality." And I think when people come onto our beautiful campus, they understand why Coppin is so special and why our students and our faculty and our staff and alumni love us so dearly. Driving up to the campus is not the best welcoming sight. And sometimes people judge the house by the curb appeal. Well, I am pleased to say that through our efforts to making sure that security remains one of our top priorities, we have an incredible police force of over 20 individuals who are full armed police officers and safety officers on our campus. We've increased our cameras across campus from 320 to 438. We have also on our campus tech emergency notification, gunshot detection technology, license plate recognition technology, remote door locking technology, and so many other opportunities that allow our students to report incidences of crime on our campus and also seek help. And I am pleased to say that Coppin has the safest residential campus in Baltimore City. That's why perception is not always reality. And we have one of the safest campuses across the entire USM system. Financially and philanthropically, Coppin is strong and getting stronger. We have increased our total fund balance from $3.2 million to over $25.8 million in a matter of 7 years. And fundraising at Coppin has never been stronger. It has increased every year since 2019. Last year, we increased our fundraising over $6 million, which was a historical milestone for the university in 1 year. And we have increased our endowment by 53% in just 3 years. The metrics that define a quality university, faculty scholarship, student achievement, strong partnerships, and competitive research, Coppin is excelling in all of those areas. We have challenges at the institution that we have continued to work through. The results is that Coppin is on the right trajectory. When I arrived, I said that our pace would be brisk and our trajectory would be north, and we are doing just that. So in the spirit of fostering our progress, I respectfully request your support of the governor's budget and the priorities that we have submitted to the governor outlined on page 18 of the document that you have. And I want to thank you for your continued support of Coppin and for the students of Baltimore City. 70% of our students, when they graduate, remain in Maryland. 50% remain in Baltimore City. With your help, we'll continue to help Baltimore climb and continue to help Maryland be the great state that we know it can and will continue to be. Thank you very much. Now I'll answer any questions. I'll ask Mr. Danik to talk briefly about question 1, which focused on our use of HERF funding. I will tee it up by simply saying that we established a scholarship committee on our campus to make sure that the distribution of our scholarships are more fair, equitable, and consistent, and that we increase overall communications across campus. The work of that committee is ongoing, and they have a charge to have their recommendations to my desk at the end of this spring semester with full implementation for fall 24. So that piece is right now underway. The other piece that I'll talk about very quickly and then turn it over to you, Steve, is that Coppin received $13 million of CARES funding. The government mandated that 6.9% of those dollars go directly to our students. And so that was one of the things that we were very committed to, is making sure that we got those dollars out of our coffers and into the hands of our students. What we found was that after we administered that $6.9 million, looking at no Pell eligible criteria, just across the board for our students based on full-time, part-time status, we then saw students were still struggling with things like medical needs and rent because of the pandemic, transportation issues, and all of these other things. $6.1 million of the 13 was institutional dollars that we had the flexibility to do a couple of different things with, but it was still narrow in scope. We decided to take that additional $6.1 million and give it to our students. Coppin was the first to use that approach, and then other sister institutions throughout the USM and the state followed suit. So that's how we administered those dollars. And while there's some disagreement on how we should have done that, we felt in reading the actual regs that the government did not specify that the financial status or the Pell eligibility status of our students had to be a factor that we considered. We were more concerned with making sure our students got the financial support they needed so they could make it through a global pandemic that none of us had ever seen. And so that's why we took that approach from Coppin. Steve, anything you want to add to that?
No, as always, you've been extremely thorough. I would just simply add that given the time in which these HERF funds were issued, as tumultuous probably being the lightest word I can use, we were extremely careful to ensure that we were following the ever-changing guidance from the federal government. And we did take our time and were very deliberate in how we handled these funds to ensure that they were distributed in the spirit in which the federal government had intended.
And then finally, you asked us to talk about the number of vacancies at the institution. I think in 2023, December of 2023, that number was about 76 vacancies. Today, it's down to about 62, 61 vacancies. So we are making progress there. What we found was that the pandemic really had a significant impact on the way our faculty and staff saw their approach to working. We had faculty and staff who were at the retirement phase of their lives, and they took advantage of that. We had some faculty who were able to flip, because the university flipped its teaching modality to fully online. When we came out of COVID, we saw faculty who wanted to maintain that type of teaching effort. That is not who Coppin is. And so that was a threshold where we saw some folks step away because of that. And then we also have seen a significant hit in our IT area, where now the actual job market really allows them to do 100% of their work from home. Again, for an institution, that's a little more challenging. So we have vacancies that folks are coming to us. The salaries are on par. It's the flexibility that they're looking for. Can I work from home 5 days a week and so forth? So we have some challenges there that we're working through. Some of the solutions that we are looking at is being more broader with how we market our job positions, using social media more, and then also using professional organizations and listservs, those things. And then we are looking at also implementing the salary ranges in our job descriptions that really give folks up front all the information they need to make the best decision for them. That's where we have been heading, and that's what we've done over the last several months. That's how we've seen that number go down somewhat. We believe that that effort will continue to allow us to drive that number down to something that's more reasonable than what it is now. With that, Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and thank you again for all the support that you all have given Coppin and the belief in the direction that we're taking our institution, and I'll answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was also thrilling to be there when LSU visited Coppin, and I'll be honest, y'all gave them a run for their money. I think somebody got fussed out during halftime because it was a pretty close score. But thank you so much for your presentation and for your leadership in coming in during COVID. Not so fun, but you didn't let the grass grow under your feet in the meantime. Are there any questions for President Jenkins or his team? My only just brief question, it's not something you have to have answered, is that we've been hearing from Chancellor Perman and other members of the system that the desire to have more of this flexibility around remote work and so forth is, I think, impacting more than one institution. Is there a work group among USM institutions or anything that's helping y'all kind of collectively,
Sure.
navigate?
No, so that conversation continues to come up. Nothing formally has been formed. But that is something I think that obviously we need to look at tackling. It is going to be an issue, I think, moving forward. That's just going to be a challenge for all of us. And then I think that one of the other areas we've seen is our physical plant, right? Just finding those individuals who are wanting to do that type of work nowadays has proven to be also one of the ongoing challenges for us.
Thank you for that. Are there any, if there are no questions, that concludes the budget hearing for Coppin State University. Thank you so much. I forgot, that's not everything. We have one more thing. Actually, I didn't see that. We will now hear from the Accountability and Implementation Board. I try to get away from acronyms because the good people and YouTube may not know what we're talking about, but AIB. And that'll be Ms. Laura Hyde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. AIB's fiscal 2025 budget decreases from the 24 working appropriation by $2.9 million, or approximately 50%, to $3 million. AIB received special funds from the Blueprint Fund, which were created as part of Chapter 36. And the agency's $3 million allowance in fiscal 25 is primarily for administrative costs. Turning to page 3, Exhibit 1, this is the overview of agency spending. This exhibit shows that $2.9 million or 98% of AIB's fiscal 2025 allowance is in 2 categories. $2.5 million for salaries and wages for regular personnel and approximately $400,000 for contractual services. Under contractual services, $200,000 of this amount is allocated to contracts for management consultants, and approximately $100,000 is for memoranda of understanding with other agencies implementing Blueprint programs. The remaining allowance totals approximately $68,000, about 2% of this budget, and that supports other administrative costs. The bold text at the bottom of page 2 asks AIB to provide additional detail on contractual services and MOUs with other agencies. Turning to page 4, Exhibit 2, this is the proposed budget. This exhibit shows the decrease of $2.9 million in AIB's budget from fiscal 24 to 25. The primary driver of this decrease is a fiscal 2024 deficiency allocation of $1 million for an independent evaluation of Blueprint implementation, plus $1.9 million in LEA and CTE technical assistance grants, which ended in fiscal 2024. Increases in this budget include $315,000 for management studies, consultants, and MOUs with other agencies, and then another approximate $350,000 increase for personnel and routine operating expenses. Turning to page 5, personnel. AIB's fiscal 2025 budget provides for 15 regular positions, which is the number of positions allocated since fiscal 2023. Of these 15 positions, 7 have been filled to date, and the approximate vacancy rate of 40%. The fiscal 2024 agency plans to fill 5 positions and then 2 additional positions in fiscal 25. The bold language on page 6 asks AIB to comment on the reasons for the high vacancy rate and provide a timetable to fill vacant positions in calendar 2024. Turning to page 7, Exhibit 3. This exhibit provides a timeline of AIB's reports and actions related to Blueprint implementation in calendar 2023 and 24. I want to point out that AIB did submit their annual report after this analysis was completed, and that the June 15th date under the state agency plan review in fiscal 2023 is incorrect. It should be March 15th. AIB is responsible for reviewing LEA and state agency Blueprint implementation plans on an annual basis. And in July 2023, the agency approved all 24 LEA implementation plans. AIB is still working to review the majority of state agency implementation plans, which were due from the agencies in March 2023. AIB is also working on Blueprint training for superintendents, school administrators, senior instructional staff, local boards of education, as well as teacher preparation requirements, which were due at the end of fiscal 2023. Turning to page 10, Exhibit 4. This is managing for results. This exhibit shows AIB's performance measures for Goal 2, which is to support Blueprint implementation. AIB reported providing 44 LEA technical assistance sessions, 22 public outreach sessions, and 8 state agency and government technical assistance sessions as part of this measure. The agency has developed but not submitted data for fiscal 2023 performance measures. Turning to page 11. LEA technical assistance grants. As mentioned previously, AIB is responsible for administrating LEA and CTE technical assistance grants for Blueprint implementation. In fiscal 2023, AIB awarded $2.3 million and $100,000 grants to 22 LEAs and the CTE committee. Fiscal 24 grants are still in process, with the application period expected to open shortly. In the bold language on that page, AIB was asked to comment on delays mentioned previously in the timetable, as well as a timetable for receiving MFR data for Objective 1 and the distribution of the fiscal 2024 technical assistance grants. On page 12, that contains the recommended actions, which includes restrictive language for a report on Blueprint implementation due to administrative delays. This ends my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hyde, for your analysis. Are there any questions for the analyst today? Seeing none, thank you. Welcome back, Rachel Heiss. Nice to see you. And what's the best designation for you? Would it be just chair, or would it be county executive? You know, I want to make sure I honor you appropriately.
Well, you would be professor, right?
You're the professor, not me. But great to see you.
Just chair would be fine.
Chair Leggett, great to see you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair, for having us today. I don't want to take too much time, but just to reemphasize just a couple of quick points. Number one, we always have to keep in mind the rationale for why we exist. When you look at the performance that this General Assembly evaluated a couple of years ago, you find that we were 40th in reading proficiency, 43rd in math. That is not where we need to be for a state of this size. Its wealth, family income, and to ensure a thriving economy, we need to do better. We have some progress to be made, but I think that we have made some very significant steps in a relatively short period of time. And keep in mind that in terms of operational functionality, the AIB has only been in existence for about a year and a half. Within that period of time, with relatively short staff and working with the State Board of Education, we've made significant progress. You see the tremendous amount of efforts and outreach that we've made, the help and assistance to all of our local LEAs, because this is a complex matter and we want to make sure that we're working in cooperation with them. And we are working very closely with the MSDE. We are very, very strongly working, especially with our new superintendent. Just to give you a couple of indications of things that we have been able to accomplish in a relatively short period of time, and you may have this. All of these things are foundational things that would lead to ultimately high increases in scores in both reading and in math. We cannot stay where we are at those numbers. So the foundation has been established. We've made all the connections that we think are appropriate. We just simply need to continue the progress. Just to give an indication in terms of pre-K, it's an increase of 18%. That's 3,643 students in just a year. The Judy Centers have gone up from 53 to 83. Statewide child care credentials program increased from 6,500 to 9,000, almost 10,000. The number of certified NBC teachers, National Board Certified Teachers, increased by 711. And we have 2,300 that are in the program now for certification. There were 700 Maryland public teachers earned their NBCs in 2023. The information goes on. The increase of those in apprentice programs, workforce coaches, and all the other things that we have in place, I think establishing a foundation for increased performance. I say this because, just to give you one example, we are looking now at making certain that our students are better prepared for reading. And we've adopted the science of reading as our goalpost and as our model for how we get there. What we found, for example, that we were not actually teaching the science of reading. And secondly, we did not have teachers that were professionally trained to do that. So our initiative, a straightforward initiative now, is to train the teachers, not only the existing teachers, but to ensure that the preparatory programs that are training potential teachers of the future would also incorporate those. Those things will provide good benefits for us for many years to come. So I say all of that to say that we have made significant progress. We support the governor's budget, but we've done all of this even without an office and with short staff in a year and a half. So the future is bright for us if we continue to move forward in fidelity to make sure that we accomplish what is part. So I'm going to turn over just to our executive director for a few comments, and then we'll respond to questions we have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to see everyone. I just wanted to share some updates, and then, we've submitted our written testimony, so we don't need to cover all that, but happy to answer questions. So over the past year, as Laura said, and thank you as always to the excellent analysis by DLS, the AIB reviewed the 24 local education agency, or LEA, implementation plans that were submitted in the spring, and did approve all of those in July of 2023. That took a little, actually longer than we had originally planned, but due to some change in how the review process was handled with MSDE, which added some time to that process. But we were happy that we were able to approve all of those and provide significant amount of feedback to the LEAs about where they had done well, shown progress, and where there were what we called opportunities for improvement. And as part of that process, we identified the need to provide more technical assistance to the LEAs, which is where the Technical Assistance Grant Program, which is why that was created. It was as a result of what we were seeing in the LEA plans. And so as Laura described, the grants provide $100,000 for each of 22 LEAs that chose to participate, and the CTE committee to basically we paired them up with what we call a strategic facilitator, which is someone who has some expertise in education, but they're not necessarily blueprint experts. There aren't a lot of those out there, but they have expertise in different areas of evidence-based best practices in education. They also have experience in strategic planning and innovative solutions. And so they've been working with their LEAs and the CTE committee since October, and helping them develop their next plans, which are due in March. Part of one piece of it is due in March, really around strategic planning and sort of big picture thinking around how you're going to resolve not the minutia of the blueprint, but sort of the big challenges. And then they have the rest of their plans are due in May. And that is where they will be providing more of the detailed implementation around each of the 5 pillars. So the board actually met last week and approved at least $2 million for grants to be provided for fiscal 25. We've reserved money in our budget for fiscal 24 to be able to provide these grants in 25 because the mandated technical assistance funding has expired. This is the last year for that. So we reserve the money to be able to potentially continue strategic facilitators if we find that they're effective, and if also the LEAs find that they're effective, and to provide more targeted technical assistance around specific challenge areas. And one challenge area that I imagine you're all familiar with is the budgeting and what we call allocation and reallocation of resources. So that is the first priority for the targeted technical assistance, is going to be to bring on finance experts and budget experts who can work with the LEAs, and we're going to provide a priority to LEAs that partner with their county government to do this work, to think about and look at the budget of the school systems and the requirements of the blueprint and the resources that are available, and really help think about how to strategically, not just 1 year at a time, which is typically how government budgets, but a strategic plan to allocate the resources over time to meet the requirements of the blueprint. So that is the next phase of the technical assistance grants. So I wanted to make sure to update you on that. In terms of the state agency plans, all of the state agency plans have now been approved, except for the Juvenile Services Education Program. That is the one remaining plan. That plan was actually submitted in June. And we've been working with that board and the superintendent around, the blueprint. It's even more challenging to connect the blueprint, but also important, like almost critically important, to connect the blueprint's vision and intent with the juvenile services program. So we still have a little more work to do with them on that, but we're hoping to bring that to the board for approval in the spring. But the others have all been approved with the same strengths and opportunities for improvement, because there's still a lot of room for improvement, as the chair noted. In terms of staffing, we did bring 2 more policy analysts on board in early January. And we're about to hire a communications and outreach director. So that will bring us to 10 of the 15 positions filled. We need to re-advertise for policy analysts in the spring. We advertised in the fall for 4, and we were able to hire 2. So we're going to re-advertise in the spring for 2 more policy analysts, as well as a research data fiscal analyst. And then we have the last major position is the Research and Accountability Director, and we're going to be advertising for that in the spring as well. And then we provided an update on the other information. Happy to go over that if you'd like me to, or just respond to questions.
Take
Madam Chair,
questions.
could I
Of
just
course.
add one last comment was on the technical assistance and why this is so important. When you developed the blueprint and you funded it, the objective was to provide the funds and support, but it was never to suggest that it would be the total sum of money that will be utilized for everything, that there's an obligation at the local level. And so in order to fulfill that, they have to think differently, more creatively. You simply can't say we're going to do all the things we've done in the past and simply add more money from the blueprint on top of that. It anticipated that you're going to have to make some adjustments, some changes. And so the technical assistance and other things, working with the complete budget, hopefully will provide some benefits in terms of how you do that. But it was never designed and cannot be done. You have not provided enough money that will allow for all of the things to simply be added on top of everything people are currently doing.
I want to say that's a persuasive message from a persuasive messenger as a former county leader, and maybe challenge to some of your comrades at the local leadership level that we're in it together. Are there any questions for the panel? I'll start with Delegate Harrison.
Appreciate it, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your presentation. So speaking about staffing, let's have a quick discussion about that. So has AIB looked into hiring or asking for a PIN for a specific position dedicated to government affairs? We really appreciate how available Rachel makes herself for members. But most agencies have a PIN dedicated to this work, and wanted to know what the AIB thoughts were on that.
The communications and outreach director, part of the responsibilities of that position would include government relations. And that is the position that we are just hopefully about to hire for. We're certainly happy to have additional staff because it's a lot of work, and it's a small agency. So if there's a need for that, we're certainly willing to request that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think as we get further along in this process, I think it's going to be needed even more as we see now. So appreciate that.
That's a good point.
Right.
Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remember when we passed the blueprint a few years ago, there were a lot of us who, at the time we recognized the challenges that the blueprint would offer. And in many cases, some of these challenges, at least our perception would be that they would be insurmountable. And certainly I don't want to relitigate that now. In fact, my message back home is the exact opposite. Now that it's the law, we should make every effort we possibly can in its implementation. So first of all, I want to thank Rachel and AIB. You guys have done an outstanding job, being a resource to our folks back home and implementing certain parts of the blueprint. But the question that I have, it has to do with this deficiency, the $1 million for this independent evaluation. Can you comment on that? I wasn't aware at all. I didn't know if that was part of the blueprint or if this is something we legislation.
It is. Yes. So as part of the blueprint, it called for an interim evaluation and a final evaluation. And the law requires the AIB to hire a third-party independent evaluator to review the blueprint implementation and progress. The interim evaluation, the current statutory date it's due in this October. In order to put an RFP out to procure an evaluator, you have to show that you have the money in your budget to pay for the full cost. And we did not have that. And so we requested a deficiency, which Governor Moore has provided based on the estimate of what it will cost. And so if that is approved by the General Assembly, then we would go ahead and release the RFP as quickly as possible after the budget is adopted to get the process underway. Separately, I will say, so it's, right now it's due in October of 2024. There was some discussion last year about whether that was the appropriate timing, given the delay in the start of the blueprint, because it was originally going to be implemented beginning in July of 2020, and it wasn't really at least the formula funding until July of 22. So given that delay in the start of the blueprint, would it make sense for the interim evaluation to be moved back 2 years? And so the AIB has, and there was a bill that almost passed last session to do that. The AIB has also proposed moving the date to 2026. But that would still, we would still need to go ahead and put the RFP out and bring the evaluator on as soon as possible.
Do you think?
Could I just comment on that as well? This is important for us to do. This is a very complicated plan. And you provided a great deal of resources. It would be ill-advised for us too far down the line to say we've missed the mark, we've done something wrong. And so as a legislator, as a government, and speaking my role as a Palmer County executive, I don't want to wait to the end of the process to find that we're doing something that is not appropriate. And so in terms of the interest, I could give you all the information that we have at our disposal, but you need that independent analysis to say, have we done this right? Are we on the right track before we go to 2032 and find out we've missed the mark?
Do you think if you're going to go through the procurement process, that they're going to have that by October of this year, that that'll be enough time to complete that report? I mean, realistically, when do you think we'll actually see that report?
So we've now proposed that the deadline for that be moved to 2026. I don't think I think we'll be doing well to have someone on board by October of 2024, but we will move as quickly as we can once we can get the RFP out. I think 2026 is doable. I'm not sure that I don't know how doable something sooner than that is.
Well, you should have realistic expectations.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the panel? Seeing none, thank you, Chair Leggett.
Thank you.
Executive Director Heiss, for your time. And this concludes the budget hearing for today.